Hey guys, it's Coach Matt with Lifelong Recovery. So in this video, I'm going to talk about dating and recovery and what that looks like. So this can be a really tricky subject for a lot of people, especially in early recovery, because dating in recovery, it's just going to look different than when we are in our addiction. One of the most obvious things is I'm in recovery, then I can't be drinking or using, right? So I might have used drinking and using to help me socially, to make me more comfortable, to get rid of anxiety, just lots of things like that. So my brain has literally become used to these substances and really depends on them for just normal quote unquote functioning, even though it's really not functioning. It thinks it's functioning and it's become used to having the substances, and so it somewhat adapts. Don't get me wrong, obviously substances are very destructive to the brain. Frequent use of substances, alcohol and other drugs, it's very destructive, but you adapt to it and you get used to it. So now if I have been using substances for a long time and I decide to quit, well, my brain is just honestly it's not going to like it, to be quite honest. My brain is going to try and get me to continue to use, and it's just going to be more comfortable when it is using. So you can imagine the combination of that kind of like discomfort of now not having substances combined with trying to date, which can be an uncomfortable thing in and of itself. It creates this really tricky situation. So the first thing I would say is, if you're new in recovery, if you've recently quit using substances, it really is not recommended to rush into a relationship, to get into a relationship quickly. So if you're not in a relationship already, I would highly, highly recommend giving yourself some time for many different things, which I'll talk about in a second, but essentially for the brain to heal before you get into a relationship. So that time frame, there's no exact science on it, of course. A lot of people say give it a year, which can sound like a long time, and that can be pretty daunting. If you're willing to wait a year, great. If you're not, I would at least wait. I would say at least 6 weeks to 3 months. Three months to me is a good. That's a decent place to start. I think 3 months gives your brain a decent amount of time to pair somewhat. Now, don't get me wrong, I think a year is really good. I think that gives your brain optimal time to repair. It gives your brain time to adjust to recovery for you to become more comfortable. So if you're willing to do the year, great. If not, just don't rush into it. Give yourself at least some time. I would say at the very least 6 weeks to 3 months before you go looking for a relationship. And the big thing with that is, depending on how long you've been using substances, you may need to rediscover yourself. You may need to find out who you are. I've told you guys, so I was drinking and using from the time I was 15 to 27. So again, it's my adolescence to adulthood when you really start to develop as a person. Your formative years, I was always under the influence. So when I got clean and sober, I really didn't know who I was. And I'll tell you guys, I'll be honest, I didn't wait a year. It was recommended to me. I did wait it was about 3 months, but as I'll go through a little bit later, one of the dangers of dating early in recovery is it can be a huge trigger for relapse. And I will tell you guys, I was very close at one point to relapsing as a result of just being in a relationship, struggles that went along with a relationship. So that's kind of first and foremost thing is the brain does need some time to heal. It needs some time to adapt to living life clean and sober. The other thing with that is infrequent substance use, especially in addiction. My values may have changed drastically. And really, what that looks like is I've probably lowered the bar for what's acceptable to me many times throughout my addiction. So, again, like I was saying, you may need to rediscover my identity. I may need to find out who I am, what's important to me. It's just not, I mean, you can't really live according to your values when you're in addiction, or it's really hard to do that. Values typically, the definition of addiction, the substance comes first, right? So anything else that's important to you, it at least comes number two. So obviously, my values, they may need to be restored. I may need to reevaluate my values, look at what is important to me, and start trying to live according to those values because I probably haven't been living according to them for a while. So, and again, this takes time. My brain, if I've been using substances frequently, my brain has been accustomed to instant gratification. That looks like a lot of different things. Obviously, with the substance, you get that immediate hit of dopamine, but my brain has been so accustomed to that that I'm going to look for that immediate gratification in lots of different areas, and dating can be one of them. So, again, I really need to reevaluate my values. I need to allow my brain time to heal and become more accustomed to not getting that instant gratification and being comfortable with it's really you're trading instant gratification for long-term gratification. What's going to satisfy you in the long run and give you more joy and peace, I would say, instead of that just immediate hit of dopamine. And the other big thing with this, like I was saying earlier, is probably the most important reason for not rushing it is that dating early in recovery makes you extremely vulnerable to relapse. So basically, because the emotional part of my brain has overridden the logical part of my brain with the substance abuse, the more substances I'm using, the more I make decisions based on emotions and less with logic. So you can see how that is going to, if I'm just thinking with the emotional part of my brain, I'm going to be much more likely to relapse because obviously relapsing isn't logical, right? If I think about what's all going to happen if I do start drinking or using again, then I'm probably going to decide not to do it. But if I'm just thinking with the emotional part of my brain, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling neglected, I'm feeling bored, angry, all these different things, then I've got a much higher chance of relapsing if I'm thinking with that emotional part of the brain. So part of this allowing the brain to heal is allowing the logical side of your brain to start correcting itself, so it's more of an even split that you're thinking with your rational side of your brain and the emotional side of your brain. So guys, I will make a part 2 to this video. Thank you for watching. I hope this helped. Please stay tuned for part 2. Thanks.